In Washington, D.C., a lady goes to the nearby metro station while following an instant message saying she'll find the response she looks for under crossing 1114. Notwithstanding, when she shows up there, she doesn't find anything with the exception of her passing on the grounds that an approaching train kills her in short order. In the meantime, in Thailand, American PC engineer Max is getting done with his last task nearby. Subsequently, he returns to the lodging to prepare to get back, and he's shocked when he finds a bundle hanging tight for him with no source. Inside he finds an exceptionally current telephone yet no signs about how he should manage it. Max chooses to leave it until further notice and turns on the news, which is as yet examining the question of a disputable security financing charge that would approve the NSA to redesign its ongoing observation innovation around the world. At that point, a message from an obscure representative shows up on the new telephone let Max know that the inn will have a reduced cost rate this end of the week. Just when Max checks with Gathering, he gets affirmation that the promotion is valid, so he chooses to remain 2 additional days. Simultaneously in Russia, an uncovered man likewise gets an instant message telling him another telephone has been recognized. During the end of the week, Max unwinds and has a great time while as yet staying aware of the news, permitting him to get familiar with the bill hasn't passed as a result of one vote yet. NSA chief and Bill Ally Burke won't remark on it. Watching the news likewise causes Max to learn of a stunning treat. The flight he had expected to return home on crashed soon after departure and no one made due importance. Max is alive thanks to the telephone message. Discussing the telephone, Max gets another message advising him to purchase portions of an organization named Scissor, however he chooses to disregard it. Some other time when he strolls by the Gathering, Max praises the representatives on the inn's brilliant method for showcasing their promotions, yet they don't have a clue. At the point when Max gets back to his room, he attempts to call the telephone organization to attempt to figure out who sent the message, yet their framework says obscure shipper too. To make matters more secretive, the news shows that Scissor shares are soaring, so Max has botched an immense financial planning and open door. The following morning, Max gets another instant message advising him to go to Prague in the Czech Republic, and this time he chooses to comply when he shows up at the air terminal. A Russian cabbie named Yuri offers to drive him into town in his old vehicle. He's extremely pushy, and Max is reluctant. However, he winds up tolerating in light of the fact that Yuri offers a level modest rate. During the excursion, you'll be amazed to see Max's telephone since that model isn't authoritatively out yet, and takes the risk to give him his card since working with contraptions as his seasonal work. When he's at the inn, Max calls the dispatch organization, however they aren't permitted to share data about legislators since it's an issue of protection. At that point, he receives another message advising him to go to the club and play gaming machine 13, which will hit Bonanza and for additional twists. The machine is presently taken, however Max is so frantic not to botch another open door that he pays the ongoing player €100 to assume control over it. The man leaves us. Max will play straight away. What's more, similarly as the text anticipated, he wins the Bonanza. Since the club has surveillance cameras all over, this entire trade is seen by the security group, and Pioneer John arranges his men to watch out for Max. Next, Max receives a message to go to Blackjack Table 6, and he trades his award for chips to wager by any stretch of the imagination, as the message says, procuring him another win. John sees Max seeing his telephone while he plays, so he sends one of his safety officers to let Max know that telephones aren't permitted in the club. Not able to surrender this open door presently, Max calls Uri to check whether he can assist him with figuring out how to get to the messages without conveying the telephone with him. Uri acknowledges to help, yet it'll require a couple of hours. So Max gets back to the inn where he finds a couple contending in the quarter. Camilla appears to need to move away from an insane man, and Max comes with all due respect, which procures him a punch from the person that takes him out. When Max is oblivious, Camilla uncovers it had all been a demonstration and clones his telephone SIM card prior to awakening him. With the other person gone, Max takes the risk to play with Camilla, and they consented to talk later. In the meantime, John's group finds there's no record of Max's messages in any framework, which ought not be imaginable. Back to Max, he meets with Yuri again, who introduces a Bluetooth message to discourse transmitter on his telephone, permitting Max to go into the club with just an earpiece. Yuri's likewise intrigued by the unknown message since they're concealing the shipper, and Max contemplates whether he can figure out who sent them. However, sadly, that requires a degree of hacking that Yuri can do in Moscow, where he has generally his high-level hardware and associations. Max gets back to the club, and adhering to the guidelines in his ear, he figures out how to win once more. Seeing this on the surveillance cameras, John and his men pursue him, pursuing him through the structure. Right when he's going to make it outside, Max is impeded by Specialist Dave from the FBI, who captures Max on the spot. John attempts to stop him, guaranteeing Max is their person, yet Dave doesn't tune in and removes him while reminding John he isn't a specialist any longer. Minutes after the fact, Max is taken to a neglected stockroom where Dave cross-examines him about the telephone by undermining him with his weapon. Max swears he is clueless and Dave trusts him, so he abandons him for some time. A short time later, John shows up at a similar structure, having utilized his assets to find out where Dave is stowing away. Seeing as John won't leave without replies, Dave shares the data he has. They're exploring individuals getting monetary tips by means of instant messages. Every one of the beneficiaries are American. However, in any case they appear to be irregular. The first was a leader at a significant credit department. The second was a real estate professional, and the third one was the lady from the metro station who ends up being an IT manager at the branch of Safeguard. As a matter of fact, one of the messages requested that she shut down the firewalls to the Pentagon servers, as the shipper is generally untrackable and the receipts can't be cross-examined in light of the fact that they all kicked the bucket in dubious conditions. They found Max ahead of time on account of the FBI working with Burke's high-level spying framework, which permitted them to capture the texts. John and Dave consented to cooperate and Max joins too to try not to be shipped off prison. Dave will save the telephone for the evening and Max mustn't leave the lodging for his own security. The following day, John goes to see Mueller, the gambling club proprietor, who orders John to use however many assets as important to track down the individual behind those texts. In the meantime, Dave calls Burke, who consents to go live with his global positioning framework in 3 hours. At the inn, Max is exhausted until he gets a call from Camilla and they get a beverage together at the inn bar while holding over private stories. Sadly, their little date is intruded on by John and Dave, who have come to get Macintoshes to begin an arrangement. They've confined the follow and presently they need 3 directives for a lock, so Max should adhere to the guidelines as expected until it's finished. To accomplish this, John gives most extreme additional chips to kick him off. Max gets back to the gambling club and wagers by any stretch of the imagination. Be that as it may, this time, he loses and gets a message making sense of this has been an admonition. Assuming that he switches off the telephone once more, he'll be killed. This sounds like a catastrophe. However, the texts are enough for Berkman to follow the area of the congressperson to Maryland, USA. In any case, when Burke hears this, he arranges everybody to close all global positioning frameworks down right away and afterward calls Dave to cut short the mission on the grounds that the NSA observation program known as Echelon is by all accounts included. Dave follows the orders and illuminates Max and John that the explanations behind the N are grouped. Be that as it may, John can figure Echelon is involved at the NSA Central Command. Burke's going off the deep end, needing to realize who has hacked into Echelon to send these messages. However, the framework shows no unapproved access. In a little while, John illuminates Mueller that Dave left with a telephone and his hypothesis about Echelon, so Mueller orders him to watch out for Max. Since he's as yet alive, this baffling association might get in touch with him once more. At night, Max visits Camilla at her home where they share their fantasies for the future and go through the night together. The next morning, while Max is diverted, Camilla gets a call that reminds all her Maximum occupied and inside the condo. Meanwhile, the telephone gets a message with a location, so Burke orders Dave to send a specialist professing to be Max. Dave doesn't figure they can deceive the text or like this, and he ends up being correct when the specialist arrives at his objective. He's killed in an auto collision brought about by somebody controlling the stoplights. Back to Max, he's keeping himself occupied by investigating Echelon, which permits the NSA to capture each call and email residents sent. The update that wasn't supported by Congress would have permitted them to place a camera in each individual's home to needing to occupy him. Camilla gets friendly and notices Omaha, Max's old neighborhood, which he never filled her in about. Devastated, Max acknowledges Camilla is working for somebody. However, before they can examine things, Camilla sees an expert marksman on a rooftop across the road and pushes Max to the ground before he shot. There additionally are hired fighters coming up the steps that Camilla can see on her surveillance cameras, so she conceals Max in the restroom while attempting to recuperate the firearm she secreted under the kitchen table. This permits the rifleman to see her and hurt her arm with a shot, making Camilla choose to leave the weapon and cut the entryway with a discharge poker prior to stowing away. The cutting is effective and one of the soldiers of fortune bites the dust. However, the other still makes it inside and hears Max making commotion in the restroom. To save Max, Camilla takes a chance with going through the condo while evading the expert sharpshooter's fire and hops on the soldier of fortune to stir something up. With one speedy maneuver, the hired soldier figures out how to overwhelm Camilla and Max assists her by cutting the man's leg with a brush. This allows Camilla the opportunity to at last kill the person, yet the expert sharpshooter escapes when he hears the police alarm drawing closer. Unexpectedly, another person enters the washroom. John has been working with Camilla from the start. Since the condo has been compromised, John removes Macintoshes with him while in the city. Dave recuperates the telephone and finds another message requesting that he get Max or he'll be killed too. Max leaves with John in his vehicle, who illuminates him. You can't simply got away from the NSA, so they should disappear. Notwithstanding, Max gets a thought he needs to go to Moscow and see Yuri, who might have a method for investigating his SIM card. John declines, figuring they can't believe some irregular person. However, Max persuades him by bringing up Russia has further developed frameworks in the USA and they don't have elsewhere to go in any case. Luckily, John has the clone SIM card data Camilla procured and he can ask Mueller for safe making a trip to Russia. When they come to Moscow, Berg's spying framework tells him of their area and he sends Dave after them. John and Max visit Yuri, who swears he doesn't realize anything after John undermines him and vows to take care of business in 3 hours. A short time later, John and Max take a stroll through the city and Max will hear the reason why John left the FBI. He was against Berg's following strategies and go on and on. After 3 hours, when they got back to Yuri's place, they find no one got to Echelon to send the messages. They were sent by Echelon itself. All the message had sent had data from its ability to keep an eye on everything. It realized the flight would crash since it captured the fuel examination. It knew about Scissor stocks thanks to perusing the proprietor's messages with its investors and everything in the gambling club. It could figure thanks to the quick way it could count cards and monitor the moves in the gambling machines. Their discussion is abruptly hindered by the appearance of the FBI, so John and Max go through the secondary passage and take a van from a neighbor to get away. This triggers a vehicle pursuit all through the city that closes when John and Max mess up and wind up cornered before a passing train. Luckily, John has a weapon. What's more, when Dave leaves his vehicle, John shoots and makes the vehicle detonate. Dave gives the telephone back to Max and concedes they need him since Echelon will converse with him, as opposed to even Bert can contact him now. The NSA likewise realizes Echelon is sending the messages. This after Max undermines him with his own weapon. Dave swears he's his ally and gets Macintoshes to consent to help. The following message incorporates the location of the primary PC work Max could possibly do. So the triplet flies to Omaha. The spot they're going to is a changed-over shelter purchased by a startup wanting to rent data transmission, and Max had consistently thought it was an unusual structure to house servers in. The potential clients hadn't loved it. By the same token, the organization was sold at a sale before it even opened. The spot hasn't been placed since the deal and they can't see as the ongoing proprietor. When they show up, the FBI explodes the way to get sufficiently close to the structure, which is vacant aside from the servers. Max receives a message requesting that he approve profiles which would permit the servers to get outside information. So Max will work after Birth gives us okay. On account of Max's administrator secret key, they gain fast admittance to the servers just to think that they are totally vacant. The gathering leaves the structure thinking they've burned through their time. Yet another specialist accompanies significant news. The proprietor of the structure was the real estate professional that passed on the grounds that he likewise received messages. His visa had likewise been the one to purchase Max's telephone. Getting dubious, Max returns into the structure and finds Echelon is leaving his home PC and moving into the servers. This implies Burke doesn't have control over it any longer. It likewise makes sense of why Max was picked. Echelon needed to move and Max was the only one with a key to leave the Pentagon. Echelon had utilized the IT lady from the train to bring down the firewalls. Its arrangement is extremely straightforward. Since Congress didn't support the update, Echelon has moved so it can redesign itself. This building is only a transitory home. Before long it will take inhabitants and each PC on the net. Dave orders Max to stop it. Be that as it may, he receives a message saying don't attempt it. Furthermore, that is when Max sees that Echelon is showing him monetary records since it's abducted the whole populace's cash. This makes sense of the last casualty who worked for the biggest credit information storeroom in the country. Exploding the office would make everybody lose their cash. So Max starts chipping away at attempting to get around the security safeguards to stop the redesign easily. Dave calls Berg to refresh him on the circumstance. Yet, incidentally, Burke doesn't believe that they should close Echelon down since this is what he had for a long time truly cared about. Also, presently he doesn't have to trust that Congress will adjust their perspectives. He even has authorization from the president. Dave and John would not follow these orders. Consequently, Dave gets terminated and Burke sends different specialists after them. While Dave and John give a valiant effort to protect themselves from the approaching assault with a couple of weapons they have, Max has a thought when he understands the PC has a camera and a mouthpiece. So he puts on the earpiece and figures out how to talk straightforwardly to Echelon. Max starts seeking clarification on some things and Echelon makes sense of that its essential command is to safeguard the public safety of the U.S., which it characterizes as a country of residents with freedoms safeguarded by the Constitution. Any danger to that opportunity should be killed, and that implies Max actually can accomplish something. He makes Echelon look for all internet-based articles that criticize the update bill. By realizing this data, Echelon reaches the determination it is a danger to American opportunity and closes itself down not long before the FBI overwhelms Dave and John and everybody gets captured. In a little while, Burke is giving unfortunate clarifications to the president and getting a sense of ownership with the wreck. This likewise implies he'll need to show up before the Senate Knowledge Oversight Board of Trustees, which will in all probability have his head. Mueller celebrates when he hears the issue has been addressed. What's more, Max is before long let out of jail thanks to Camilla, who has paid everybody's bail. No one will be squeezing charges since they don't maintain that the general population should find out about what occurred with Burke an inconvenience. John considers Dave's proposal to return to the FBI while Max reunites with Camilla, who makes sense of Mueller sent the cash for the bail and is likewise sent a robust check for Max's much obliged, concluding he wants an excursion. Max welcomes Camilla to France since that was her fantasy. At that point, Max receives a message from Uri, who compliment him on nicely done. Talking in Uri, he's still in Moscow, yet things are changing for him. In the wake of shaving and changing his hair to look neater, he puts his skipper uniform back on the grounds that he's been essential for the Russian security administration from the start. The strong man from the very start is his chief, who recognizes him for his activities and brings up they've assisted the Americans with pursuing the ideal choice. Make a point to buy in and turn on warnings so you can observe more recordings like this. Thanks for watching.